So this Feast of the Holy Cross has been around for maybe about the 4th century, 5th century. Actually, prior to the 4th century, if you went back and looked at Christian gathering places and Christian imagery, they didn't use crosses or crucifixes, not at all. And they didn't because crucifixions were still quite common. So it was the way the Romans took care of traitors, the very kind of public, long-suffering death, and they'd leave them on the cross until the birds kind of pecked away at their bodies and left the skeletons hanging there, as a way to say to everybody, don't fool with us, because this is what we'll do to you. This is what we do to traitors and the worst of the criminals. Most of the time, they're little criminals they just killed other ways. But bad ones got on a cross. So they saw it. They'd be going out the city gates, and there would be lines of people crucified. So they didn't celebrate it all that much. It began with Saint Helena. You know, Constantine had converted to Christianity, the emperor of Rome, and his mom was kind of like the first anthropologist or archaeologist and went off to find things in Israel that had to do with Jesus. And she found the cross that buried down in a cave. Still under the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is that cave where she found the cross. But since that time, that image of the cross has been important for Christians, that we hold it in a place of specialness for us. Cardinal Lustiger, who was the Cardinal Archbishop of Paris for almost 20 years, tells a story about 3 young boys who decided to play some tricks on a priest. And so they made up really bad sins, and then they went into the confessional to confess these really, really bad sins. 2 of them were Catholics, and 1 was a Jewish kid. And so the 2 Catholics went in and made up these terrible sins and came out giggling and running around the church. And finally the Jewish boy went in, and he had never been in the confessional before, so he went in and he made up his big sins and confessed. And the priest must have just had enough. And so he said to him, for your penance, I want you to go out there in front, there's a big cross, and I want you to stand in front of that crucifix and look into the face of Jesus and say to him, you did this for me, and I don't give a damn. And say it 3 times. You did this for me, and I don't give a damn. And he got through it twice. And then wept and left the church and was never the same. This Jewish kid converted to Christianity against the wishes of his family, later got ordained a priest, later became a bishop. Cardinal Lustiger says, I know the story is true. It's mine. It was his story. The image of the cross helps us to remember the tremendous gift of God's love to us. It is meant to be an image of love. Yes, it's an image of suffering, but it's part of a story of love. While it was very difficult to watch that movie, The Passion of Christ, years ago, the one real critique I had of it is it didn't have the first part of the story. It was missing all that Jesus did. It just had the passion. But the passion has to be connected with what went before. Because it's his life-giving love that the crucifixion is simply a part of, which is what St. Paul tells us in that beautiful second reading today. This is who Jesus was. He was God. He had all the power of God, but he didn't act on that power. That translation, I always think is a little weird. He did not deem equality with God something to be grasped at. I think grasped at. What is that supposed to mean? Is that like Jesus is grabbing at being God? No, he's God. He's not grasping at it. He's not exploiting it. When he was on earth, he didn't exploit his godly power. Now, I think if I had godly power, I'd exploit it. And like a mega Superman, you could do anything. You're God. But Jesus has that power, and he doesn't use it. In fact, Paul says, he becomes servant, taking on everything for us to express love. A love so great that he didn't even turn away once he was arrested, once he was suffering. Certainly could have. He had the power of God. But he doesn't. Because he knows this is the Father's will, that through this mystery of his death and resurrection, all humanity would be forever changed. And so it was and is changed. Love. A love that would go to the cross, as Jesus says to his own followers. There's no greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. So he does. He does not give up the message that you are loved, the message of the kingdom of God. He's invited to run away from it, but he does not. He holds on to the message. And the resurrection proves the message true. Very, very public death for all the community to see. And then he rises. Because God's message is you are loved and you are redeemed and you are forgiven, and there's nothing you can do to stop that. It's dead. What is dead? Sin. St. Paul spends a lot of time talking about this, and it's a difficult concept to deal with, but that is sin that dies. Because Jesus becomes, as Paul says, sin. He becomes sin for us, to put to death sin forever, so that it no longer rules this world, but Jesus rules it. Now, are there parts of the world out there that are still filled with sin? Yes. And that's our job, is to invite people out of that sinful life, out of the violence that we saw again this week, out of the hatred and envy, out of all those judgments that come from this world, to know that this was done for you, to be free of all that. for you to live differently in a very violent world. To not give in to that, but to be different from that. I heard somebody recently say that they were on a retreat, and the retreat master said, okay, for this next period of reflection, what I want you to do is to go off and pray for a while and think about the person in your life who most resembles Jesus. And so then they came back, and then they were supposed to go around and share. And one woman said, I really, really, really had a hard time with this, coming up with somebody who loved me so much that they told me the hard truth, and then I would want to kill them. Who in my life is that? Because that's what happened. That's what Jesus did. He spoke truth. He was truth. Out of love, he speaks truth. And then they killed him for it. And the line the church has always said is, he did that for each one of us. And if there was only us, if it was just me and Jesus, out of love, he would die for me. I would kill him. And he would rise and forgive me. That he does that for each of us. The triumph comes on the cross. And its image is powerful. And so we hold it sacred. And as Catholics, you all know, we put bodies on them. We have a great big one here so that you can't avoid it. That is what love looks like. Arms open wide to the world, giving his life for you.